Congressman, thank you for being here with me and Tyler today. You've represented the 38th District in the Houston area since 2023. Why run for Senate?
Well, first of all, I just think that it's time for new leadership in the halls of the Senate. If you think about this, it's time to hand down and pass the mantle down to the next generation. If you look at who President Trump has surrounded himself with, our Vice President is 41 years old. Our Secretary of State is in his early 50s. Our Secretary of War is in his mid-40s. And this is not just about codifying Trump's agenda for the next 3 years, but it's about having the America First movement for a couple of years, generations after that. And I feel like now is the time to do it. And I was one of the first people in the country to endorse President Trump. I served as a surrogate for him while he was campaigning, got to fly with him, got to travel with him, got to campaign on his behalf. And he, in turn, won Texas by 15.7 points, which means that the people of Texas want an America First fighter. That's exactly who I am.
You talk about, sort of the younger generation. President Trump, though, is almost 80.
Yeah.
So your thoughts on that?
It's amazing. I mean, it's really interesting. When you travel with him, you realize that he is unlike any 80-year-old I have ever seen in my entire life. In fact, he has more energy than I do. He is certainly an anomaly. If you look at most people at his age, they don't have half the energy that he has. But I will tell you, he has surrounded himself with the next generation because he knows that he has to bestow this America First movement and embed it in us, in the next generation, in order for us to move forward. Again, most 80-year-olds are not like that guy. He wore me out when I traveled with him, and I couldn't believe it.
Now, listening to you a bit previously, it's my understanding that removing any unnecessary regulations is a priority for you in the Senate. Are there any specific regulations that come to your mind you want to get rid of?
Red flag laws. Red flag laws are something that are really important that we get rid of. Our Second Amendment shall not be infringed. I'm a military guy. I'm a multiple AR-15 owner and handgun owner, and I've realized that for those people that want to protect themselves, for those people that want to defend ourselves against a tyrannical government, that's why the Second Amendment was implemented, and I want to do away with red flag laws. I also want to make sure that we codify the policy at our southern border. Look, President Trump secured the border with the stroke of a pen. We didn't need any more laws. We needed a new president, and then now it's up to us to codify these laws so that we don't revert back to what we saw for the 4 years of the Biden administration, where we had 20 million people enter this country illegally.
I want to get back to the border in a little bit, but you mentioned getting rid of red flag laws. Are there just all of them, or any specific like red flag laws you're looking at?
All of them at this point. Look, we already have a system that's been put into place, and especially the newer laws that we are seeing, really it only hurts the law-abiding citizen. And again, this is Texas. This is an open carry state. And it's that way for a reason. You have the right to protect yourself, protect your family, and protect your fellow citizen, and I want to make sure that we keep it that way.
What would you say to those who feel that having more guns on the street only leads to more violence, only leads to more murders and killings?
No, that doesn't make any
sense, because at the end of the day, criminals are the people that are going to break the law. There are over 400 million guns currently in circulation. Pandora's box has already been open, and so there's enough weapons in this country for every single American to have one or two. So it's really not about that. What it is about is ensuring that you have law-abiding citizens having easy access to acquiring a weapon to protect themselves and their families, and I want to make sure that we uphold that.
We're talking as a trial for, I believe, a former Uvalde teacher is currently on trial. When you look at something like that, like a school shooting, how can you reduce the number of school shootings? What legislation would you like to see implemented to do that?
That's an excellent question. The issue is not red flag laws, because again, a criminal is going to break those laws to attain a weapon. It's just that simple. What I would like to see is us harden our school system. If we are sending $200-300 billion to Ukraine, you know what we can do? We could have a presence at every single school, every single public school that doesn't have one in this nation.
A presence of
some kind of law enforcement officer, or somebody that's willing, a good guy with the gun to stop a bad guy with the gun to protect our children. When I'm in the halls of Congress, I feel very, very safe. When I walk in my own office, there's a metal detector. There are multiple guys carrying what? AR-15s. Now, if I feel that way on Capitol Hill as an adult, guess what? My precious children should have that same level of protection, if not more. And the issue at this point is implementing red flag laws, making more laws, just incentivizes criminals to break more laws. Let's use these resources to harden our schools.
And where do you get those resources from? Do you just get them from, taking money away from, issues like Ukraine and stuff like that?
Like I just mentioned, if we have $200-300 billion for Ukraine, it will take a fraction of that cost to protect our children.
Border, and then I want to get to a bit of foreign policy. You said you want to codify some of the border laws under the Trump administration, some of those initiatives. What specifically are you referring to?
Again, building the wall, finishing the wall. Walls work, and at the end of the day, you can't tell me anything about ensuring that we have passage and we have easy ways for people to cross our southern border. What President Trump did was basically have a zero tolerance policy. We need to maintain that zero tolerance policy. And I understand people are clamoring for, we need the next way for immigration reform. But my big thing is more, if you can't put the cart in front of the horse, we have to ensure that we secure our border. You have to ensure that we keep it that way, and then we can have secondary and tertiary order conversations. But first things first, we are a sovereign nation. We had 20 million people enter our country illegally, and that's just not going to work. And as somebody that has deployed all over the world, I spent time in Iraq, flew 55 combat air missions in Baghdad, did 2 years of service in Saudi Arabia as a diplomatic liaison officer. You had to have a diplomatic passport to enter Saudi Arabian airspace. No other country behaves that way. Why should we?
Why bring up the airspace point?
Because it's very important to understand that you have to have a diplomatic passport to even enter the airspace and fly into that country. That's how stringent their rules were. There is no porous border in Saudi Arabia. There is no porous border in other countries. They aren't having 20 million people enter their country illegally. They know every single human being that even enters their airspace.
Now, you feel that walls work. Why?
Of course they do. Of course they do. Well, I mean, we have walls in our own homes. We have gates in our own communities. Again, it serves as an immediate deterrent. And then when you cross that wall, you know exactly who's here and who should not be here. It really is that simple.
There's been a lot of talk recently, particularly during the last state legislative session, about school vouchers, education savings accounts, providing taxpayer money to homeschool students or the private school students. It's my understanding that Senator Ted Cruz, who you would be working alongside if elected, has introduced a universal school choice law in the Senate. If you had a chance to vote on that, how would you vote?
Well, I'm actually a product of school choice.
You're actually a what?
A product of school choice. I'm a guy that when I was in middle school and high school drove 1 hour one way every single day to attend a private school that my parents struggled to pay for, but they made ends meet in order for it to work for my brother and I. So again, if you show me a young person that is motivated, that's willing to put in the work, we have the opportunity to provide that individual, that young person, with the resources to better their lives. Let's identify those young kids, offer them a better future. That's exactly what Senator Cruz is trying to do.
If you could tell voters about one specific vote that you're most proud of, or one specific law you've introduced that you're most proud of, what would you mention?
Well, I come from the energy capital of the entire world in Houston, Texas. The energy corridor is entirely in my district. So we have had 2 bills signed into law that benefit the oil and gas industry, and I am very, very proud of that fact. We can get to the details of that here in a second, but I really want to talk about being a United States Senator and then being the energy senator, not just of Texas, but of the entire world. We're sitting here on the Permian Basin. We're sitting here in this country of the Marcellus Shale up in the Northeast. We have so many resources that God has given us right here in our own country that we have to make sure that we pay attention to this, because it's an issue of national security. It's an issue of energy dominance, and being from Texas, every single issue is tangentially related to the oil and gas and energy industry, and that's exactly how I want to serve as the next senator from Texas.
Relating to oil, obviously we just saw the strike in Venezuela that that ousted President Nicolas Maduro, and President Trump repeatedly talked about oil, when he had that news conference. You issued a statement on Venezuela. It sounded to me like you supported the military operation. And you've also called yourself America First, if I understand you correctly. Some have said the military operation is not in our best interest. Some have said it's not, some may say it's not necessarily America First. So 2 questions going off of that. Why did you support the operation, and how do you view America First?
First of all, that's one of the most incredible operations that this country has ever seen. as an Apache pilot, as somebody that understands the coordination and the precision that it took and the communication across all agencies to get that done. Unbelievable. What we did in 2.5 hours, it has taken presidents years to get done. Also, President Trump talked about no new wars. That's the America First policy. No occupation. That's the America First policy. People talked about us going into World War III after we bombed Iran. What happened? There was no World War III. Last I checked, I haven't seen brigades or regiments enter Venezuela like we did during the Iraq War, the one that I served in. I am the guy that wants to ensure that we don't use our lives and use our sons and daughters and make sure as fodder and ensure that if we do send them somewhere, it's actually a worthy cause. What we did was strengthen our position and send a shot across the bow to the entire world that we are not to be messed with. And we did it without occupying that country with large military forces. That is a shot across the bow to Putin, China, and anybody else that doesn't take us seriously. That's peace through strength and a definition of America First.
Could you see this incentivizing, Venezuela or Iran to do something militarily, though, in the future?
Not under this president.
Why? Well, not under this president.
Because I would be because if I were those countries, I would be absolutely terrified. If you recall, Maduro was the one that called us cowards and said that we would never come get them and we would never do anything about it. And then next thing he knows, he's getting flown over the Statue of Liberty and purple walked in New York City. That is peace through strength. Without us spending trillions of dollars of entering an endless war. It's the definition of it.
You've been on this campaign trail now for several months. What's been some of the biggest things voters have told you that they really want to see out of a senator from Texas?
They want to see a secure border. They want to feel safe. This is a constitutional republic, and we already have our Constitution. They don't want to see Sharia law in this country. I am somebody that lived in Saudi Arabia for 2 years and Iraq for a year. I understand what Sharia law really is. I am the only candidate that's actually lived under these regimes. To see and even talk about that being the law of any piece of this country, it's just not going to work. If you want to come to our country, you got to assimilate, understand that this is America. We have our own set of laws, but you're not going to transform our communities. Those are the things that I tend to hear a lot coming around Texas, and I want to make sure that we have solutions to those problems.
Some would argue, though, and some would say that America is prosperous because of its diversity.
No, I'm not saying, at all. Oh my gosh, I love the fact that we are a very diverse country. I think that's actually great. We are arguably the most diverse country in the entire world, but we still have American culture.
And you mentioned, Sharia law. Some would also say, mentioning that is a form of fear mongering, that it demonizes some communities.
The people that say that never lived in Saudi Arabia and realize that there were public beheadings and public behandings just 10 years ago. The people that say that don't understand that women weren't given the right to drive until 5 years ago. When I was stationed in 2012, women were not even allowed to operate a motor vehicle. If you live in these regions and you go there, you'll understand what I'm talking about. And that's why I am also choosing to lead, because I have a very unique set of experiences and I've seen all this and I know what must be protected in this own country.
You're facing two well-known opponents in this contest, incumbent Senator John Cornyn and Attorney General Ken Paxton. As we get closer to the primary, what would be your message to voters who may be on the fence?
I am an America First patriot. I bleed Texas. I am born and raised here, and I am the guy that can lead us to the future. That's the other thing I hear the most about. People are looking for the next generation of leadership to step into the breach, and this goes for all parties. Whenever you walk around the House and you walk around the Senate, it looks like a retirement community, and it's time for people that are going to be around in the next 10 or 20 years to make laws that are still going to be around for these laws to go into effect, and that's why we care about it more. I have a 7, a 5, and I have a 3-year-old at my house. And I am doing this not just for them, but for everyone's children and for everyone's grandchildren in this great nation. I am giving up the best years of my life in my early 40s to ensure that we have an America that I love and that I am willing to die for.
And last thing here, you're in Tyler. What are you planning on doing today?
Well, first of all, we've already had a few meetings. We had a meeting with an energy company that's been outstanding. We've had a few interviews already. I'm going to have a very good steak, and then I'm speaking tonight at a country club for an engagement. Looking forward to meeting more people here, and looking forward to coming back as soon as I can, because the people here have been delightful.
Well, Congressman, we appreciate you taking the time.
Of course, brother. Thank you very much, man.
Glad this worked out.
And Happy New Year.